I never expected my peaceful Tuesday morning to turn into the beginning of a domestic nightmare. But there I was, standing in my kitchen doorway, staring at my mother-in-law Gloria, who had somehow materialized at my breakfast table like an unwanted apparition. My name is Sawyer, and until that moment, I'd been living what I considered a pretty well-balanced life. Working from home as an accountant, raising 2 great kids, and maintaining a happy marriage, all without the constant physical presence of my mother-in-law. Sure, she lived a comfortable 3-hour drive away, which meant manageable weekend visits every couple of months. Perfect distance, if you ask me. I sold my house, Gloria announced, stirring sugar into her self-served coffee. She'd clearly helped herself to my kitchen before I'd even come downstairs. The market was too good to pass up. I gripped my empty coffee mug tighter, trying to process her words. You sold your house. When did this happen? Oh, just finalized yesterday. She waved her hand dismissively, as if selling her home of 30 years was as casual as changing her nail polish. I thought, why not surprise everyone? The kids will be so excited to have their grandmother around more often. The word around made my stomach drop. Around? What exactly do you mean by that, Gloria? Well, I'll be staying here while I figure out my next move. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Ethan always said I was welcome anytime. Of course he did. My dear husband, always trying to please everyone, especially his mother. I made a mental note to have a serious conversation with him later. Does Ethan know about this? I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady. Not yet. He's already left for work, hasn't he? I thought we could surprise him when he gets home. Gloria took another sip of her coffee, grimacing slightly. You know, dear, you really should try that premium coffee brand I recommended. This tastes rather commercial. Before I could respond, thundering footsteps announced the arrival of my kids. Jack, my 10-year-old, skidded into the kitchen first, his superhero pajamas rumpled from sleep. 8-year-old Ella followed close behind, her eyes widening at the sight of her grandmother. Grandma! They shouted in unison, rushing to hug her. My darlings! Gloria cooed, embracing them. How would you like having Grandma around more often? I watched their excited faces and felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just about me anymore. Gloria had cleverly ensured her announcement would have an audience. My children's genuine joy would make it nearly impossible to object to her presence without looking like the villain. Mom, can Grandma stay in my room? Ella asked, bouncing on her toes. Oh, sweetie, I brought my own things. They're in my car, Gloria interjected before I could answer. I thought the guest room would be perfect. It gets such lovely morning light. I stood there, coffee mug still empty, watching as Gloria masterfully took control of my household in less than 15 minutes. The guest room, my home office where I worked full-time, was apparently now her new bedroom. Kids, you need to get ready for school, I said, finally finding my voice. Go on up and get dressed. Don't forget to brush your teeth. As they rushed upstairs, Gloria began rummaging through my cabinets, pulling out pans. I thought I'd make the children a proper breakfast. Pop-Tarts aren't really suitable nutrition for growing minds, are they? I felt my jaw clench. The kids like their routine, Gloria, and I need to talk to you about. Oh, would you be a dear and help me bring in my luggage? She cut me off, already cracking eggs into a bowl. I packed light, just 14 boxes and 3 suitcases. For now. Those 2 words echoed in my head like a death knell. As I watched her move around my kitchen like she owned it, I realized this wasn't just a visit. This was an invasion, and Gloria had just appointed herself supreme commander of my household. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Running late tonight. Budget meeting. Love you. I stared at the message, then at Gloria humming as she scrambled eggs in my favorite pan. Something had to be done, and clearly, I would have to be the one to do it. Ethan didn't come home until after 9 that night. I'd spent the entire day watching Gloria systematically reorganize my kitchen, rearrange my living room furniture, and critique my parenting choices through carefully worded suggestions. By the time he walked through the door, I was ready to explode. Mom! Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, briefcase still in hand. What are you doing here? Gloria emerged from the kitchen, wearing the apron I'd received last Christmas. Surprise! I made your favorite pot roast. Though I must say, Sawyer's oven runs a bit hot. We should really have that checked. I watched my husband's face cycle through confusion, joy, and finally, concern as he glanced my way. This is unexpected. Why didn't you call first? Oh, you know me. I love surprises. Gloria bustled over to hug him. And wait until you hear my wonderful news. While Gloria launched into her practice speech about selling her house, I retreated to our bedroom. 10 minutes later, Ethan found me sitting on our bed, staring at my laptop screen where my work documents were still open. So, he started loosening his tie. This is something. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your mother has commandeered my home office, criticized every parenting decision I've made in the last decade, and informed the kids they'll be starting music lessons next week. But sure, let's call it something. Ethan sat beside me, his shoulder touching mine. She means well. Does she? I turned to face him. Because earlier today, she told Jack that 10 is too old for superhero comics and that he should be reading classics instead. He was in tears. Mom can be traditional, Ethan hedged. Traditional? I stood up, pacing the room. She replaced all my cleaning supplies with vinegar solutions because apparently I've been poisoning our children with modern products. And don't even get me started on the lecture about screen time when she caught Ella playing her educational math game. A soft knock interrupted us. Ethan, the pot roast is getting cold, dear. I watched my husband's shoulders tense. We'll be right there, Mom. You know I can't work with her here, I said quietly. My clients expect privacy during video calls. I can't conduct business with your mother hovering around, commenting on everything. It's temporary, Ethan assured me, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Just until she figures out her next move. The next morning, I woke to the sound of pots clanging in the kitchen. Gloria had apparently decided 6 a.m. was the perfect time to start making a proper breakfast. I found her whisking eggs while simultaneously lecturing Jack about his posture. Grandmother knows best, she was saying. When your father was your age, he sat up straight as a pin. Now look at you, hunched over like a little gargoyle. Jack caught my eye, silently pleading for rescue. Before I could intervene, Gloria spotted me. Sawyer, dear, I've been meaning to talk to you about the children's schedules. All these after-school activities, soccer, art class, it's too much stimulation. In my experience as a teacher, children need structure, not chaos. Their schedules are fine, Gloria, I said, pouring coffee into my travel mug. They're happy and doing well in school. Well, if you say so. Her tone suggested otherwise, though I noticed Ella's multiplication tables could use work. I've already ordered some workbooks. I nearly dropped my mug. You what? Just a few supplementary materials. Nothing excessive. She turned back to the stove. Oh, and I took the liberty of signing them both up for piano lessons. The teacher's an old colleague of mine. We start next Tuesday. I felt something snap inside me. No, you didn't. I'm sorry. You don't get to make these decisions, Gloria. This isn't your household. The kitchen fell silent. Jack slipped away, leaving his half-eaten breakfast behind. Gloria slowly placed the whisk down, her back still turned to me. I'm only trying to help, dear. Someone needs to think about the children's future. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. I grabbed my keys, my hands shaking. I'm taking the kids to school, I announced. When I get back, we need to talk about boundaries. Gloria's reply followed me down the hallway. Of course, dear. Though in my experience, boundaries often limit a child's potential. Just look at how Ethan turned out under my guidance. I closed my eyes, counted to 10, and called the kids. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After dropping the kids at school, I decided to work from my favorite coffee shop rather than return home to another round of Gloria's helpful suggestions. As I settled in with my laptop, a notification popped up from my bank. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the transaction details. Gloria had used Ethan's old credit card, the joint one he'd forgotten to cancel after getting a new one, to make several large purchases. Piano lessons weren't the only thing she'd been arranging behind our backs. My hands shook as I scrolled through the charges. Private tutoring services, educational software subscriptions, and most alarming of all, a 5-figure deposit on a condo. In our neighborhood, my phone buzzed. Gloria's text read, Dear, I noticed you left without properly clearing the breakfast dishes. I've rearranged your kitchen cabinets to a more logical system. Also, the children's new tutor starts tomorrow. I called Ethan immediately. Your mother just spent $12,000 of our money. What? His voice cracked. That's impossible. She doesn't have access to our accounts. Remember your old Capital One card? The one you kept as a backup? She must have found it in your desk. The silence on his end spoke volumes. There's more, I continued. She put a deposit down on a condo, 3 blocks from our house. Maybe this is good news? Ethan's voice was hesitant. If she has her own place. The deposit was made with our money, Ethan. Our money? When I finally returned home that afternoon, I found Gloria in my home office, surrounded by boxes of my work files. She'd cleared my desk completely, replacing my dual monitors with framed photos of herself with the kids. "Oh good, you're back," she said, not looking up from her organizing. "I hope you don't mind, but this room really wasn't being utilized properly. I've donated your old desk chair. Terrible for posture. The new one I ordered should arrive tomorrow." "Gloria," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we need to talk about the credit card charges." She waved dismissively. "Ethan always said I should treat this as my home too. And really, the children need proper guidance. That tutor comes highly recommended. You had no right." "I have every right," she cut in, her voice sharp. "I sold my house to be closer to my family. Everything I'm doing is for this family's benefit. Unlike some people, I think about the future." "What's that supposed to mean?" Gloria finally looked up, her expression eerily calm. "Well, dear, let's be honest. Working from home, letting the children play those violent video games, serving processed foods. These aren't exactly hallmarks of good parenting, are they?" Before I could respond, my phone chimed with an email. It was from my biggest client, canceling our afternoon video call because they'd received a concerning email about my professional setup being compromised. "Did you?" I stared at Gloria. "Did you contact my client?" I merely suggested that conducting business calls from a family home might not be the most professional arrangement. She smiled. "I'm sure they appreciated the heads up about privacy concerns." My vision blurred with anger. "You had no right to interfere with my work." "Oh, Sawyer," Gloria sighed, arranging another photo frame on my former desk. "I know change is difficult, but you'll thank me later. Now, about the children's new schedule. Get out." The words came out barely above a whisper. "I beg your pardon." "Get out of my office. Now." Gloria's face hardened. "I've raised a child. I've taught hundreds more. I think I know what's best." "What's best?" I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "You want to know what's best? Not undermining my career. Not stealing our money. Not trying to take over my children's lives. I see Ethan was right about your tendency toward hysteria," Gloria said quietly. "We'll discuss this later when you're more rational. Oh, and dear, the condo I put a deposit on? It's not just an investment. Consider it my permanent residence. We're going to be seeing a lot more of each other." She brushed past me, leaving behind the scent of her perfume and the crushing realization that this wasn't a temporary invasion. This was just the beginning of her takeover plan. My phone buzzed again, another client rescheduling. As I watched my professional life unravel in real time, I knew something had to give. And soon, Jack's scream echoed through the house, sending me running upstairs. I found him in his room, frantically pulling books from his shelves while Gloria stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "My comics." His voice cracked as he turned to me, tears streaming down his face. "They're gone. All of them." "I took care of those inappropriate materials," Gloria announced, her tone suggesting she'd done us all a favor. "A growing boy needs proper literature. I've replaced them with some classic novels, the kind your father read at his age." I stared at the pile of leather-bound books on Jack's desk, then at my son's devastated face. Those comics weren't just entertainment, they were his prized possessions. Some were rare editions Ethan and I had tracked down for his birthday, others were gifts from friends. They represented years of collecting. "Where are they, Gloria?" "The garbage collectors came this morning." She smiled, pleased with herself. "I must say, it feels wonderful to finally address this issue. Those violent pictures were rotting his brain." Jack slumped onto his bed, shoulders shaking. I sat beside him, pulling him close while my mind raced through possibilities. Thursday pickup meant the truck was probably still in the neighborhood. "Get your shoes on," I told Jack. "We're going comic hunting." Gloria stepped into the room. "Now, Sawyer, don't undermine my authority. Jack needs to learn." "Your authority?" I stood up slowly. "You have no authority here." "None. I am his grandmother, who just threw away hundreds of dollars worth of his personal property without permission." I grabbed my keys. "Jack's shoes. Now." We spent the next hour following the garbage truck's route, but it was too late. Jack's collection was gone, buried somewhere in the back of a compactor headed for the landfill. When we returned home, I found Ella hiding in the garden, her small hands covered in dirt. "Grandma said I can't plant flowers anymore," she whispered. "She says it's unladylike and I'll ruin my hands." Something snapped inside me. I marched into the house, finding Gloria rearranging my living room furniture again. "We need to talk," I said. "About Jack's improvement plan? I've already enrolled him in Latin classes." Much more suitable than those cartoon books. About you leaving. Gloria froze, then slowly turned to face me. I see what's happening here. You feel threatened because the children are finally getting proper guidance. Ethan warned me about your insecurities. Excuse me. He confided in me, dear. About your resistance to traditional values, your modern parenting notions. She adjusted a picture frame with deliberate precision. He agrees the children need more structure. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Mom called. Maybe we should let the kids try some of her suggestions? Keep the peace. I felt the walls closing in. Gloria had somehow managed to turn my own husband against me, using his lifelong pattern of seeking her approval to manipulate the situation. The children are fine, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. They were happy, well-adjusted, and thriving before you arrived. The only problem here is you. Well, Gloria's eyes narrowed. We'll see what Ethan thinks about that when he gets home. I've already invited the new tutor for dinner to discuss the children's deficiencies. She brushed past me, pausing at the doorway. Oh, and I took the liberty of canceling Ella's garden club. She'll be starting ballet instead. Much more appropriate for a young lady. I watched her disappear upstairs, probably to rearrange another room of my house. Through the window, I could see Jack sitting in the backyard, staring at the spot where he used to read his comics. Ella was still hiding among her flowers, likely wondering if they'd be the next things taken away. This wasn't just about me anymore. Gloria wasn't just trying to take over my home. She was systematically destroying everything that made my children unique, happy, and confident. And somehow, she'd managed to convince Ethan it was all for the best. I pulled out my phone and started searching. If Gloria wanted to play games, fine. But she wasn't the only one who could make plans. It was time to fight fire with fire, or in this case, something with 8 legs. I found Lila Torres's art studio tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore. The window display featured elaborate spider sculptures made from twisted metal and dark glass. Perfect. So let me get this straight, Lila said, twirling a purple-streaked lock of hair. You want me to transform your house into a spider-themed nightmare to drive out your mother-in-law? She has severe arachnophobia, I explained, watching Lila sketch quick designs. And she's destroying my family. Say no more. Lila's pencil moved faster. I've got an installation that'll make your place look like the set of Arachnophobia Meets Modern Art. When do we start? That evening, I convinced Gloria to attend her church group's potluck dinner. As soon as she left, Lila arrived with her team. We had 4 hours. Mom's really afraid of spiders? Jack asked, helping unpack boxes of decorations. Terrified, Ethan confirmed, surprising me with his enthusiasm. Remember when she found that tiny spider in her garden and refused to go outside for a week? Ella looked up from the box she was exploring. Is this mean? I paused, her question hitting harder than expected. Sometimes, I said carefully, we have to be a little mean to protect what matters. Lila's team worked efficiently. Subtle spider web patterns appeared on the walls, nearly invisible until they caught the light. Delicate metal sculptures hung from corners, casting spindly shadows. The piece de resistance was the guest room, my former office, where an enormous abstract spider sculpture dominated the ceiling, its legs stretching down the walls. It's beautiful, Lila declared, stepping back to admire her work. In a creepy, unsettling way. We finished just as Gloria's car pulled into the driveway. The kids retreated to their rooms, and Ethan and I positioned ourselves in the kitchen, trying to act natural. Gloria burst through the door, clutching her casserole dish. That potluck was dreadful. Nobody appreciated my traditional recipes. Now, about tomorrow's schedule. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the wall where the light had caught one of the web patterns. What is that? What's what? I asked innocently. Gloria stepped closer, squinting. Her face paled as she noticed more webs, then the subtle sculptures in the corners. Are those spiders? Oh, those. Ethan's voice was casual. Just some new art we picked up. Very modern. Gloria's hands began to shake. Take them down. Right now. But they're part of our new decor, I said. The artist spent hours installing them. Besides, they're not real spiders. I don't care what they are. Gloria's voice rose. This is completely inappropriate. I won't stay in a house with these. These things. Well, I said slowly. You could always move into that condo you put a deposit on. The one you bought with our money. Gloria's eyes narrowed. Ethan, are you going to let her speak to me this way? Actually, Mom, Ethan stepped forward. We need to talk about those credit card charges. This is ridiculous, Gloria sputtered. I'm going to my room. We followed her upstairs, watching as she opened the guest room door and froze. The massive spider sculpture loomed above, its shadows dancing in the evening light. Gloria screamed. "Take it all down," she demanded, backing away. "This instant." "No," I said quietly. "This is our house, Gloria. Our rules. Our choices. If you don't like it, you know where the door is." "You planned this," she whispered, realization dawning. "You're trying to drive me out. Like you tried to drive out everything that makes my children happy?" I countered. "Their comics, their gardens, their choices." Gloria turned to Ethan, tears welling up. "You're choosing her over your own mother?" "I'm choosing my family," he replied. "All of it, including boundaries." Gloria's face hardened. "Fine, if that's how you want to play this." She pulled out her phone. "I still have that condo deposit. And when the children realize what a mistake this is, they'll know where to find their grandmother." As she stormed out, I caught a glimpse of something in her expression. Not just anger, but fear. Fear of losing control, of being alone, of becoming irrelevant. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered Jack's comics in the garbage, Ella's abandoned garden, and my determination hardened. Sometimes protecting your family means making difficult choices. And this was just the beginning. I thought Gloria's departure meant victory. I was wrong. The next morning, Child Protective Services showed up at our door. "We received an anonymous report," the social worker said, flipping through her notes. "Concerns about an unsafe home environment, psychological manipulation of minors, and..." She paused, frowning. "Disturbing decorative choices meant to inflict emotional distress?" My stomach dropped as I invited her in. The spider installations, which had seemed like such a clever plan yesterday, now felt like evidence against us. I watched her take photos, noting every web pattern and shadow casting sculpture. "The children's grandmother provided extensive documentation," she continued, gesturing to a thick folder, "including receipts for educational materials that were allegedly destroyed, records of canceled enrichment activities, and concerning text messages." Of course, Gloria had kept records. She'd been a teacher for 30 years. Documentation was second nature to her. My phone buzzed. "Ethan," Mom's lawyer called. "She's suing for grandparents' rights and partial custody. Claims were unstable." The social worker interviewed Jack and Ella separately. Through the closed door, I heard Jack's voice crack as he described losing his comics. Ella talked about her garden, then burst into tears. "Mrs. Bennett," the social worker said afterward, "we have some concerns." "This isn't what it looks like," I started, but she held up her hand. "We have reports of you using psychological warfare against a family member, disrupting the children's educational progress, and creating an environment of hostility and fear." "That's not." "Your mother-in-law provided evidence of her attempts to enhance the children's education, while you appear to have deliberately triggered her documented medical condition to drive her away." A knock at the door interrupted us. Lila stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Sorry, but I need to remove the installations. The invoice wasn't paid." I closed my eyes. Gloria had canceled the payment. "Mrs. Bennett," the social worker continued, "given the circumstances, we're recommending a temporary custody evaluation. The children will stay with their grandmother during this process." "No," I whispered. "You can't." "Mom." Jack appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Grandma's here with police officers." I rushed to the front door. Gloria stood on our porch, flanked by 2 officers and a man in a suit I assumed was her lawyer. She'd traded her usual floral dress for a conservative business suit. "This gives us temporary custody," the lawyer said, holding out papers. "Given the documented psychological abuse and unsafe living conditions, the court agreed to an emergency order." "Unsafe?" I sputtered. "You're the one who..." "Now, dear," Gloria cut in smoothly, "let's not make this more traumatic for the children than necessary. Jack, Ella, pack your overnight bags. Grandmother will help you get settled in the new condo." I watched, paralyzed, as my children were led away. Ella looked back once, tears streaming down her face. Jack wouldn't meet my eyes at all. "This is what happens," Gloria murmured as she passed me, "when you try to outsmart someone with decades of experience handling difficult situations. I taught middle school for 30 years, dear. Did you really think your little spider trick would work?" After they left, I found Ethan sitting in Jack's room, holding one of his son's abandoned action figures. "The lawyer says fighting this could take months," he said quietly. "Mom's documented everything. Every conversation, every decision we made. She's painted us as unstable parents who used psychological torture against a vulnerable elderly woman. We were protecting our family, I said, but the words felt hollow. Were we? Ethan looked up, his eyes red. Because right now, our kids are sleeping in another house, probably terrified and confused. And the worst part? Legally speaking, we gave Gloria everything she needed to take them. I sank down beside him, the action figure between us like a tiny plastic accusation. The spider decorations that had seemed so clever now felt childish, petty. We'd tried to fight manipulation with manipulation, and Gloria had turned our own weapon against us. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Gloria. The children are settled in nicely. Jack's new Latin tutor starts tomorrow. Isn't it wonderful how everything worked out for the best? I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my own defeated expression back at me. We'd lost more than a battle with Gloria. We'd lost our children. 3 days after losing our children, Gloria called to say Jack had fallen ill. When we arrived at her condo, we found our son perfectly healthy, sitting at a desk covered in Latin worksheets. A small miscommunication, Gloria said, not even pretending to look apologetic. But since you're here, we should discuss the children's future. The condo was a museum of forced perfection. Classical music played softly in the background. Ella sat ramrod straight at a small table, practicing cursive. No dirt under her fingernails, no joy in her eyes. Jack, I said, keeping my voice steady, why don't you show your dad your room? Once they left, I turned to Gloria. Enough games. What do you want? Want? Gloria adjusted a perfectly positioned flower arrangement. I want what's best for my grandchildren. Structure. Discipline. Proper education. You mean control? I mean salvation from your permissive parenting. She smiled thinly. Though I am willing to negotiate visitation rights. Negotiate? I stepped closer. These are our children, not bargaining chips. Children who are finally thriving under proper guidance. Gloria gestured to Ella's perfect handwriting. No more comic books or dirt digging. Real achievements. Something in Ella's posture caught my attention. Her shoulders trembled slightly, her pencil pressing too hard against the paper. She wasn't practicing cursive, she was drawing tiny flowers in the margins, then quickly erasing them. Ella, sweetie, I said softly, what happened to your garden? Grandmother says ladies don't play in dirt, she whispered, not looking up. And Jack's new Latin tutor? I asked Gloria. How's that going? Excellent. He's finally learning something worthwhile. From down the hall came the sound of breaking glass, followed by Jack's voice. I hate this. I hate all of this. We rushed to find Jack standing amid the shattered remains of a crystal vase, tears streaming down his face. I don't want to learn Latin. I don't want to be proper. I want to go home. Now, Jack, Gloria started, but Ethan cut her off. Stop. Just stop, Mom. His voice was different, harder than I'd ever heard it. Look at them. Really look at what you're doing to your grandchildren. I'm giving them opportunities. You're crushing them, I interrupted. Like you tried to crush Ethan. But here's what you never understood. Our kids were already thriving. Jack's comics taught him creativity and moral courage. Ella's garden showed her how to nurture life and find beauty in small things. Sentimental nonsense, Gloria scoffed, but her voice wavered. Is it? I pulled out my phone, showing her Jack's last report card. Top marks in creative writing. His teacher said his superhero stories showed exceptional empathy and understanding of complex moral choices. Ethan joined in, displaying photos on his phone. Ella's science project on plant growth won first place. Her dirt digging taught her more about biology than any textbook. But Gloria's perfectly composed facade cracked slightly. But structure, discipline. Mom, Ethan said quietly, when was the last time you saw them smile? Really smile. Gloria looked at her grandchildren, really looked at them for the first time. Jack, surrounded by broken crystal, his worksheet crumpled in his fist. Ella, her perfect posture crumbling as silent tears fell onto her cursive practice. I just wanted, she whispered, then stopped. Wanted what? I asked, gentler now. To not be alone? To feel needed? There are better ways, Gloria. We're taking our children home, Ethan said firmly. You can fight us in court, drag this out for months. Or you can realize that love isn't about control. Gloria sank into a chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling like the shattered vase. I don't know how to be any other way. Then learn, I said. Not by controlling, but by understanding. Start by really seeing who your grandchildren are, not who you want them to be. Jack moved first, picking up a piece of broken crystal. I'm sorry about the vase, grandmother. "I'm sorry about your comics," she replied, her voice barely audible. It wasn't a complete surrender, not yet. But as we gathered our children's things, I saw Gloria watching them with new eyes, seeing perhaps for the first time the damage that comes from trying to reshape someone else's joy into your own image of perfection. A month after the confrontation at Gloria's condo, I found a package on our doorstep. Inside was a collection of vintage superhero comics, first editions, carefully preserved. The note read simply, "For Jack." I was wrong. That evening, while the kids were doing homework, Gloria arrived for her first supervised visit. She stood awkwardly in our living room, clutching a gardening catalog. "I thought," she said to Ella, "we might look at some seeds for spring planting. If you're interested." Ella glanced at me before responding. "I already started my tomatoes. But you could help with the peppers." The tension in the room softened slightly. Jack emerged from his room, one of the vintage comics in hand. "This one's really good, grandmother. Want to hear about it?" Gloria sat down, her usual perfect posture relaxing just a fraction. "I would actually." I watched from the kitchen as Jack explained the complex moral dilemma facing his favorite hero. Gloria listened, really listened, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than judgment. When Ella brought out her garden plans, Gloria didn't once mention dirty fingernails or unladylike behavior. Later, after the kids went to bed, Gloria lingered by the door. "The condo sold," she said quietly. "I'm moving to a smaller place. Still in town, but not so close." "That's probably best," I replied. "I found this while packing." She handed me a photograph. Ethan at 10 years old, reading a comic book, joy evident on his face. The last one I let him keep, before I decided he needed to grow up. I didn't understand then what I was taking away. I studied the photo, seeing echoes of Jack in young Ethan's expression. "I was so afraid," Gloria continued, "of becoming irrelevant, of being forgotten. I thought if I could shape them into my idea of success." She trailed off, shaking her head. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved, Gloria. Neither do they. I'm learning that. Slowly." She straightened her jacket, a ghost of her old formality returning. "I've enrolled in a gardening class. And a therapy group. For grandparents learning to let go." As she turned to leave, I remembered something. "Wait here." I retrieved a small spider plant from my office, one of Ella's propagation projects. "It's hardy," I said, holding it out. "Thrives in most conditions. But it needs room to grow its own way." Gloria took the plant, understanding flickering across her face. "Like children. Like all of us." After she left, I found Ethan in Jack's room, arranging the vintage comics on a new bookshelf. "Mom called her lawyer," he said. "She's dropping everything. No more custody battles, no more court dates." "Good." I picked up one of the comics. Though I have to admit, I never expected vintage comics as a peace offering. "She's trying," Ethan said softly. "It's not perfect, but it's something." The next morning, I noticed new growth in Ella's garden. Tiny shoots breaking through the soil where she and Gloria had planted pepper seeds. Beside them stood a small sign in Gloria's precise handwriting. "Growth takes time. Love takes patience." I thought about the spider decorations, still packed away in our garage. Our attempt at revenge had backfired spectacularly, yet somehow led us to a better resolution than I'd imagined possible. Not through forcing Gloria out, but by making her see what she was really losing. Jack's voice drifted from his room as he read his new comics. Ella hummed in her garden. From the kitchen came the sound of Ethan making breakfast. Normal sounds, ordinary moments. The very things Gloria had tried to perfect right out of existence. My phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. "The spider plant looks lovely in my window, though I prefer to think of it as a friendship plant now." I smiled, typing back. "Growth takes time. Love takes patience. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing someone a better way to love, messy, imperfect, and real. Like superhero comics and dirt under fingernails, like spider plants reaching for light in their own unique way. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about learning to let go of the need for revenge altogether."